Hello and welcome once again to Clash Course. My name is Joey Livingston and my host, as always, is Gregor Brahe. Hello, Gregor.
Hello, Mr. Livingston. I find it interesting to say as always when I just got confirmation that won't be the case next week.
Well, up to this point, right. So Gregory is not going to be with us next week. It is the beginning of the end for him.
I'm being fired. That's what they're telling me, at least. I mean, and not quite so certain.
We didn't use those words. Yeah, we didn't use those words. We said.
Yeah, I think it was something canned. Or
yeah, temporarily repositioned.
Right. Being made redundant.
Right. So, Clash Course is the show where, Christopher has this great tagline. How come we don't have a great tagline? What's our tagline?
I don't know, because you're the one who introduces the show every week.
You don't have... Your tagline for your show is, I'm an atheist.
Right, it's a great tagline. Considering it was like the first groundbreaking show where an atheist and a theist co-hosted a show on a network founded by a theist, I thought that, seemed an appropriate tagline at the time. I mean, it could now be, hi, I'm your host, Greg Brahe, and Bob's a theist. But, I figure I let him come up with his own taglines.
Clash Course is a show where Gregory and I fight a lot. But next week, I'm going to have a guest on, tentatively. That's the plan. And but this week, Greg is going to make me feel bad about myself. Is that correct, Greg?
That's the goal, always,
okay.
Though. So I don't know if that's any different now. But no, this week I'd like to. I realized, I guess, to open this, that I made a bit of an oversight, or we did at the beginning of this show when we are the primary placeholders, I guess, that will be the people who are consistently appearing on here. And I, as an atheist, am basically an open book about where I come from on most of the questions about theism. But I realized it was very negligent on my part to not interview you, or perhaps grill, on exactly what it means to you to be a theist. And today, I don't really have a point to argue. I just wanted to explore your positions a little bit more thoroughly to give us a better grounding. I mean, I think we've established that you believe the Earth
Hold on just a minute,
is
Gregory.
God.
Hold on. Let me talk to my crew. Crew, I hear two machines. I hear Greg's machine and I hear the video machine. So if you could turn the video machine all the way down, that would be great. There we go. Fantastic. Okay. Proceed, Gregory.
All right. So I think we've established already that you believe that the Earth is God, and that the Earth needs to punish us so that we can be happy. Right? That's not a mischaracterization at all.
None of that is true, except to say that I demonstrated a model in which you could view the Earth as God, if you wanted to use that word, by demonstrating that it was conscious and willful, and that it created us.
Right, and that's why I think it's worthwhile for us to explore what you actually do believe to be true a little bit more.
Yeah.
And to do that, I mean, I know we have, in sincerity here, covered your past a little bit, that you used to be quite Calvinist, and you drifted away from that, and you sort of gave things up in stages and steps. But
I was briefly, I wouldn't say that I was a Calvinist. I briefly wrapped my mind around Calvinism and thought that maybe this is it, but that didn't last long. I don't think I ever adhered to pure Calvinism, except to understand the 5 points of Calvinism and wrestle with them.
So today you describe yourself as a theist. Are there any other terms that you feel appropriately describe where you are, I guess, theologically, or I hesitate to even use the term, but religiously speaking, or as faith pertains to your life?
As far as philosophies that revolve around religion. I don't think so. I think that I agree with what, I very much trust science and what it tells me about the universe around me. I don't believe in things that contradict science, but I do wonder what lies beyond the current scope of science.
Okay. And that wondering, is that sort of a open jar for you, sort of mystically wondering, or is that where you sort of derive the term God or theism?
No, I derived the term God from my roots, which are very much Christian. When I was in Christianity, I never thought of myself as any sort of fundamentalist. I thought I was on the cutting edge all my life. But looking back now, I can see some very fundamental notions and some beliefs that were very exclusionary of other people. I see the beliefs that I had kept me from really being friends with people who were worth being friends with in school, and in my adult life.
So it's awesome, of course, to hear you say that you see these things now. But I have a question that I think is going to relate that more specifically to our common goal here: is how did you come to see that? What were the major steps, and do you have any specific points in your life that were significant to you along that path?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to Dr. Jones, because, boy, I could get into a long story about my life. Suffice it to say that there was a period of time in my late teenage years when I got into drugs and traveled across the country doing them. And then during that time, this is kind of a shameful confession, but I'm just going to be honest. I decided not to believe in God during that time because I couldn't stand the thought of him watching me do all these things that I believed were so wrong. And I actually said a prayer. I said, God, forgive me, but I'm not going to believe in you anymore. But that wasn't a real confession of not believing in God, was it?
It's unusual. I can't say that you were a completely unique case. I've certainly heard of that happening before, but that seems often to be what theists press on atheists as the rejection of God. You know that God exists, and you simply reject believing in him. And it seemed at that point that would have pretty accurately described where you were at.
Yes, but to say a prayer and ask God to forgive you for not believing in him is the thing that I often look back at and laugh. And I don't think at the time that I said the prayer that I saw the irony in it.
We all have our faults in that. Yeah, I remember when I was going through the RCIA program and trying to find God, the conversations that I'd have with Father Sal and some of the other priests, and even with my now wife, then fiance Anne, was regarding prayer and how I didn't even know how to pray. I mean, it was something that just was a completely foreign concept to me. So I remember praying in a way that was almost the exact opposite of that. Instead of saying, God, please forgive me for not believing, but I'm not going to believe in you. It was me saying, God, I don't actually believe you exist, but if I'm wrong and you're listening, let me know in some way. Obviously, that didn't work. But.
Right. That's kind of like clicking the little hang up button on the phone to see if you can get a signal.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
During that period of my life, I had some crazy acid trips that I could spend a lot of time telling you about, but I'm probably the only one that finds them fascinating, so I don't talk about them very much. I have my crew hagging me on here. But after that period of time, I actually moved to, through certain events in my life happening, I ended up moving to Texas, where I worked for a painting company that was there, and I attended the what was at that time a church where Dr. Jones was teaching, and that I began a long period of my life that is still continuing, where I worked with Dr. Jones in lots of things. I ended up quitting my job and volunteering for what he was doing there. Strongly believed in his efforts, which at that time I viewed as trying to bring clarity to the text by going to the original languages. What I realized years later and looking back was that he was doing something that I found to be the work of genius, which was that he was teaching church people what they actually believed. If you think about it, most at least I'll speak from my experience, most church folk that I speak to don't actually understand what they believe in any great detail.
Can you expand upon that? You mean as in it's an unanalyzed personal belief, or they don't understand the text from which they claim to derive their beliefs?
I'll offer just one simple example for the sake of brevity, but to state that the biblical text is infallible is a statement of illiteracy. It demonstrates that either you have not read the whole text or you have read it illiterately. I don't know whether it means you are illiterate or that your literacy stops before it gets to the Bible, but there is no way to reach that conclusion without suspending literacy.
Well, and that's one where I mentioned the concept of it being a unexamined belief. I think that many people profess beliefs that they don't necessarily hold to be true, but they don't know that they don't hold it to be true, as odd as that may sound. I mean, in the same sense that a person can believe that holding your breath or drinking a glass of water upside down can cure you of the hiccups, even though it's never once worked for them and they've just never thought about it. There's plenty of other beliefs like that people will repeat as if they know them to be true or believe them to be true, just because they've heard them somewhere or because it's something that their parents always said, and they carry on with them. So is that the kind of belief that you're talking about, or is it more about
that's part of it. But I remember Dr. Jones. I remember one teaching in particular where he was up in front of everybody, and I can't remember the passage that he was reading from because it's been so long. But he was reading through this passage in the Old Testament, and he was, explaining the language and the context. And he came to this point where he was showing everybody that what this passage was saying was that in God's sight, we were barely even worthy to be dogs licking his shoes. And I remember everybody looking at this passage and some people in the crowd even saying, "Amen, amen, we're not worthy." And I didn't pose any verbal objection at that time, but I remember being a little sick to my stomach. But I couldn't deny what I was reading. And he bred in me a very rational view towards trying to understand the text, rather than trying to bring what I already believed to the text, of instead trying to understand what was actually there, whether it was in the original language or just the English, which is sufficient. If you go to the English text and just try to understand what's actually there without bringing your beliefs to it, you've sealed your fate. It's just a matter of time before you, hopefully, the compassion within you will say something here is not right.
So you and I have discussed in the past also the idea of the scripture or the Bible specifically being I'm trying to remember the exact way that we phrased it, but a good source of information about God or the valuable source of
the value that I see in a value that I see in the Bible that I think that you are referring to is that I think it helps us to understand the journey of our species. That you can say God exists, but you can't deny that people believed in him and that it affected our culture. And so the Bible has value in understanding why and how. It has, I think, a lot of value in understanding our roots in the evolution of mankind.
So you don't think that the Bible necessarily helps us to understand the God that you believe in in any way that's more significant than any other?
I think that there are. I don't think that I don't. When I say no, I mean that it doesn't help us as like an instruction manual, but I think that there are ideas in it that may offer some inspiration in your own journey. I think Paul has a lot of good things to say about just people getting along and loving one another, and I think that there are some stories about Jesus that are good, and they make you think, and they can make you become a better person because of it. Like when Jesus, corrects people for keeping children away from him. That was a part of their culture at that time, was that children and women weren't worth much. It was the men that needed to be put first, etc. And Jesus corrected that. He said, "Don't keep those children away from me, because the kingdom of God belongs to them." And that was a huge statement at that time.
I honestly don't know the context of it well enough to even make a value judgment on that. So I'm just going to agree with you outright that that's a significant difference in that, and I applaud things like that. But I guess the reason that I'm asking is because I've well, let me be completely frank here. When I first became associated with the New Covenant group, I didn't have a full understanding even of the positions that you and Bob and Dr. Jones hold. It was very new to me, and you guys have a huge archive of information about yourselves out there, which is great, that I've been able to mine to some extent. And of course, I've gotten to know you over the past year plus in this journey. But when I was first associating with the New Covenant group, I really thought of you as a Christian organization, a very theologically liberal Christian organization, but at least to the point where the God, not necessarily of the Bible, because it's weird to make that sort of a statement, the God of the Bible, because I think that most liberal, again, theologically liberal Christians don't truly believe in the God of the Bible, but that they do sort of look at the Bible for the primary guidance, and Jesus as a sort of an incarnation, a divine incarnation of God. And that, regardless of, I guess, the rest of it, I think that is a significant factor in what makes a Christian a Christian. And I would have thought those things to be accurate of you. So can you explain to me, I mean, at what point, if you don't, I mean, I'm assuming I've never explicitly asked you that before, but I think it's pretty clear that that's not exactly what you believe. But at what point through your journey did that sort of change?
Okay, I'm gonna have to apologize to you. I had to spank a light bulb here because it went out. Sometimes we have to spank our light bulbs when they go out here. We've got to get some new light bulbs so that we want to spank him anymore. But at what point did I stop believing what? Because I missed the last maybe 15, 20 seconds.
Let me preface this again by saying I'm not entirely sure that this is an accurate statement of you, because I've gleaned it from context but never explicitly asked you before. But at what point did you stop believing that Jesus was a divine incarnation of God?
I still toy with that concept, but my view of what that means has changed drastically. So there was certainly a time when I believed that that Jesus was Jehovah in the flesh, and that either he was showing a different side of himself, or he was showing that, there was actually, I think that the climax of that belief, if you will, in my life that I held for a long time, was that Jesus was Jehovah, but he came to correct all the things that human beings said about him, that they had either misunderstood or lied or just made up stuff for their own purpose, but that he was the true God, and that he was the true God in the sense that that we view Zeus, except he was a much bigger and less like man.
He was the conscious and willful creator that is significantly larger than ourselves.
Well, so to speak. But I had a much different way of viewing that. I really appreciate that the guest that was on Christopher's show a moment ago said something that really resonated with me, and that is that he's an atheist that believes in spirituality, and he says, I really can't find a group that I can be a part of that's accepting of me, because when I speak to theists, they don't accept my philosophy, and I can't accept the things that they're pitching to me. He said, but atheists aren't going to buy most of what I say, and he said, but I am restricted by the language that we speak. I do my best to work within the confines of the English vocabulary, but I don't feel that it's that there are some words for the things that I believe, and I find that struggle within myself. Yes, I believe in a conscious and willful creator, and yes, I do not believe in a conscious and willful creator. And to nail that down into a word that you and I can both understand is, right now, there's no shortcut. It's a long, arduous struggle, not just between you and I, but between anybody I speak with, and even with myself. I haven't thought everything through that I currently believe, and by the time I think it through, I may not even believe it anymore. This is an exercise in philosophy within my own head to struggle whether it even works. And when I demonstrated to you a conscious and willful creator that is Earth, I don't believe that Earth is God. I don't worship Earth. I don't worship anything. And I have other. I have at least one other demonstration that I'm not sure I've gone through with you yet, that demonstrates the real possibility for a creator, I believe. But these are all just exercises. They're not, write this down. 1 Joey chapter 1. It's not like that. When I contemplated the concept of you asking me what I believe, I knew that was going to be a challenge, because I'm not even sure what I believe anymore. But I'm not uncomfortable with that. I feel more alive than I ever have been. I feel like I get part of my mind gets a chance to start over. I get to go back to when I was a child, and everything was new, and it was it was time to explore, and I feel like I have another chance to do it without getting tricked by a bunch of stupid lies.
The exploration of our beliefs, I think, is a valuable exercise for anybody, and it's great to have, I guess, a non-biased or impartial outside questioner. I can't be that. Of course, everybody does bring their own biases, and that's going to be a bit of the topic for today's Inspiring Honesty, the biases that we all bring to the table. But I find that dialogue in general helps me to understand my own beliefs. And frankly, I'm pretty set in my atheistic beliefs. Now most of the dialogue that I do with theists is to explore their beliefs and to learn more on my end. I like to understand other people better and where they come from. But I do a lot of exactly that process in politics. That's I find a very valuable endeavor because, yeah, it's amazing when you start to examine things, especially when you can have somebody else who can question something in a probing manner to make you dig deeper, that you find you don't even necessarily believe the things that you thought you knew, that you thought you believed. I don't know. I find that to be valuable, and I appreciate you doing that with me here on Clash Course.
I'll tell you something that I do believe, that I think that you will have a problem with, and I'm pretty solid on this. I'm not saying I can't change my mind. I'm just more sure about this than I am most of the other things that I'm exploring right now. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right. I believe that it's valid to live within metaphor.
I'm not sure entirely what you mean by that. Could you give me a metaphor?
Sure. The earth is conscious and willful and created us.
Sure. I think that is very much metaphoric. It also can be literal, depending, again, on how we define those terms. But
or the earth is my mother.
That would probably be a better example. But I don't understand what you mean by living in the metaphor. In that
okay, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. One thing that I found with a lot of atheists, and I don't mean to be racist.
And for the record, I think that we can clarify to the entire audience that this conversation is not meant to classify any group as a whole. It's just sort of exploring the ISO terminology.
Yeah. That's why I say a lot, and I think it comes with the territory of a lot of analytical minds. Maybe not mine. I'm a very analytical person, but I don't think this way. And that is.
You're also an artist, though. That's sort of. I think the two of them conflict with each other a bit.
Yes, and it's the artist in me. I think that this really resonates with, and that is that every time a metaphor is stated, that there needs to be a literal explanation for it. I don't believe that. I don't believe that that's so.
That does help me understand a bit more what you mean, because I do tend to see things that way, that a metaphor that does not have a literal explanation that can be grasped is not a very valuable metaphor to me.
Well,
I think the metaphors are valuable when they can convey things clearly and concise in a way that cannot be done so literally.
I think that when you explain a metaphor, you remove its power. And I find a lot of power in metaphor, a lot of value in understanding and becoming comfortable with the world around me. When I say that the world is my playground, I have no desire to explain what that means beyond saying that it's my playground.
I can agree with you there, even saying that. I think often metaphor, particularly on things of that nature that are, I guess, non-controversial or that have a pretty clear frame of reference. That's the problem with metaphors, of course, the frame of reference. If I use a metaphor saying life is like a bubbler, and you're not from Wisconsin, you don't know what I'm talking about. A bubbler is the Wisconsin term for water fountain. It's weird that we call it that. I don't know why we call it that, but I do.
Yeah.
And turn signals on your cars; those are blinkers.
Yeah, we call them blinkers too.
I don't know, apparently, that's not universal. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a handful of other ones, I'm sure, but
I don't think that you should
really blind drunk. We call that Friday.
I'm not saying that you should never explain metaphors. I'm just saying that there are some metaphors that I feel no need to explain. When I look at the universe and I see God, I may struggle to explain what I mean by that to others, but that is, I guess there is a necessity to that to some extent, but I'm not struggling within my own self to find some literal interpretation of what that means, because right now I don't think it's possible, but it doesn't mean I don't see God.
That's where I struggle, and I think that we're often limited. That's why I think things like this are helpful, because as an atheist, I really don't have any frame of reference, especially the kind of atheist that I am. I know that there are plenty of atheists that come from a fundamentalist background or various degrees of belief, but frankly, the most devout belief I ever had in any sort of thing that made sense to call a god to me was sort of a quasi-amorphous deism. So I just don't have the frame of reference even to think of things. And I mean, even the guest you were talking about that was talking about spiritualism or spirituality is something that it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't have experiences that are analogous. So metaphor often, I think, speaks to experience more than it speaks to language and concrete objects. That there's like your example of the world is my playground. A playground, of course, people don't see playground and think, well, that's a swing set and a climbing wall with a slide. It's a huge categorical set of memories and experiences and things that they've done in their life. And I think those are the times when metaphors are the most powerful, that it conveys a very large set of information through a rather simple description by saying something, it's well, here's a metaphor that I heard recently that I thought was pretty good, that the Bible, and sorry, this is me coming from an atheist, but perspective here, but the Bible is like a rose growing in a pile of manure. Sure, there's parts of it that look beautiful and that are pleasant to the senses, but it's all surrounded by a big pile of crap. And that it seems pretty accurate as an assessment to me to say that, but of course
that's not a metaphor; it's a simile.
Well, that's true. If I just said the Bible is a rose surrounded by a pile, and then of course the explanation.
That's wrong again, because a simile is a metaphor. Hang on, I got to finish arguing with myself. Okay, I won.
No, a simile is a comparison using like or as. A metaphor does not use like or as. So if I simply said the Bible is... But a simile is a metaphor.
A simile is a smaller category of metaphor.
Is it? All right.
Yes.
Then it is a metaphor. Ha! Winner, this guy.
Well, you set yourself up to win either way.
I did. Nah, good at that.
Anyways.
We have a viewer comment here. I'm trying to... It's long and it's clarification of a previous one. So it says, a lot of what we consider reality seems to be what we call perspective reality. Wouldn't metaphors fit in there? Sure.
I think the metaphors are super, super useful in explaining, in finding explanation in the things that we cannot literally explain. I think that they are great for bringing satisfaction. Sometimes we cannot be exact in the things that we perceive, and metaphors, instead of giving us these dictionary definitions of the reality around us, they instead strum a chord in us, like like we're listening to music, and they bring comfort. They bring